Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing my first Power Rankings video for the post-summer Showdown little era. And this is going to be covering the APAC region. Fewer teams in this region, so just a shorter video today, and then on Friday you'll get the Western NA region, where I'll be going over the other teams, all in the Western region. So let's jump in and let's take a look at my power rankings. A few little words though real quick beforehand. Of course, these are my opinions. Obviously people have different opinions when it comes to power rankings. That's always kind of where people's rankings are. It's always how people kind of base it, and that's always a thing that happens. What I will say for my personal power rankings is that I am basing my rankings on where these teams performed recently, kind of based on their recent performances to a degree. But I'm also basing it off of how likely I think these teams are to make it into the playoffs at the end of the season, the play-in tournament at the end of the season as well. So there's no tournament or the Countdown Cup. There are no league points up for grabs. So the 6 games in this tournament are the most important games for all these teams the rest of the way. And so I just want to kind of throw out here that I am going to be basing this on how likely these teams are to make it into the playoffs. If there's a team that I think maybe is playing better than another team right now, but I think their playoff chances are a little bit weaker or significantly weaker, they're going to take a hit in their position, right? You'll see those types of things when they come up in this video, but for now, let's just go. Let's jump in. Let's take a look at the team in the APAC region that I have in the number 7 spot. Kicking off list at number 7, I have the Los Angeles Valiant. No real surprise here. This Valiant roster has been the weakest roster, I think, so far this season in the APAC region, despite the fact that their first and second half of the season was somewhat better than the Guangzhou Charge. The most recent tournament cycle for the Valiant was not good. They managed to win one match against the Chengdu Hunters. Very weak performance from the Valiant. Certainly one that leaves you desiring a lot more out of a team that has some very good players. Dia performed very well on Junker Queen, but the team itself just could not really get it together. They did not get a lot of things going in their favor, and they just did not have what you really would have wanted out of a team. In a region that's pretty small, you don't have a lot of teams. Definitely expect to see more kind of high-end performances from a team like the Valiant. They just haven't really made it look good. They struggled again in this meta, and so to me, they are a no-brainer team here in the 7 spot. At number 6, I have the Chengdu Hunters. I thought they were a lock for this tournament. They look like the 3rd best team for a while here in this tournament, and then their final weekend was abysmal. They lost games to the Valiant. They lost games to the Spark. Or not the Spark, the Charge. They lost some games that they probably shouldn't have lost. And they just did not have a good end to their Mid-Season Madness or Summer Showdown. And they just have looked like they're slipping. I still think that the lack of flexibility is hurting this roster. Only having Jinmu and Leave, to me, is not really what you want to see. They've had times where they look okay, but this really would have been a meta that you think that they would have been a little bit better at, considering it was a a Genji-heavy meta, which is something that, generally speaking, is pretty good for this team, but they just couldn't really get it going. I think that they've just kind of looked lackluster. We know about the lack of resources the organization is giving the team, so I don't put all the blame on the players, but I don't love what they've done. I don't think they look super comfortable, and so to me, not really a surprise that they have fallen in the APAC rankings, and I have them here at number 6. In the number 5 spot is the Guangzhou Charge, and despite a very weak start to the season, one win between the kickoff clash and the Mid-Season Madness, the Charge had a 4-2 stage in the Summer Showdown. They made major roster moves going into this tournament, adding Xerneas and Jimmy and Aprita to their roster, getting rid of Develop, and unique, and this team looks a lot better. They made the Summer Showdown, so they got an extra league point, which I think is going to help them quite a bit. I could definitely see this team jumping even into that number 5, maybe even number 4 spot, though I actually don't even think it's possible, so I take that back. Very good run from the Guangzhou Charge in this tournament. The thing for me really that keeps me from putting them any higher on this list is just that point gap between them and the teams ahead of them. They are 1 point behind the Chengdu Hunters, and I think that there's a very good chance the Charge pass them. But the Spark and the Fusion are both sitting at 12 points. They have twice as many points as the Guangzhou Charge. It feels very difficult for the Charge to jump those teams. And while right now the Spark are in the driver's seat for that number 3 spot, and I think the Fusion would kind of beat the Charge right now if they played, the Charge have a shot, definitely a play-in. I think of the 3 teams that are currently in the bottom half, or the bottom portion, which would be Hunters, Charge, and Valiant, I think the Charge right now look to be the strongest of those teams. I think the roster moves they made were great and fantastic. I think Jimmy's looked really good. I think this new roster has enabled Choi Se-won and Krong to have very good performances. And so I'm not necessarily surprised that this team has taken a step forward and looks a lot better now than they did before. But I am definitely impressed by what this roster has done. But I just think their weak start to the season is going to be very difficult to overcome for a push to the playoffs. But I would not write them off as a team to win in the play-in tournament, because I think if they have to match up against teams like Hangzhou, Chengdu, Philly, I think there's a very realistic shot that they could get in over those 2 other or 3 potential other teams. At number 4, I have the Hangzhou Spark. Despite the fact that their Summer Showdown was very, very weak, a 1-5 qualifier from them, I still feel better about them than I do the Guangzhou Charge. They right now are in the number 3 spot for the play-ins and playoff standings, so as long as they can kind of keep pace with the Fusion, if they don't lose more games than the Fusion do, they can take that number 3 spot and be in the playoffs. It's not that big of a deal for them. And even in the play-in tournament, I still think the Spark would perform decently well. I don't like a lot of what they did in terms of the player switching with Gushui and Bernard in the Summer Showdown. I thought that was one of the reasons why they struggled. I think they struggled early as well because of Alfie not being able to play. But I don't think that as the tournament went on, that excuse kind of holds up when they started to struggle against the weaker opposition as well. They struggled against Seoul and Shanghai without Alfie, and then with Alfie, they still struggled against a lot of the other teams. So I think you have to look at the Spark and kind of judge what they've done. I don't think they've looked incredible. I think they've had a lot of weak moments. In this Summer Showdown, they've had their ups and downs all season, but I think they're still in very firm position to make the play-ins at the very least. In the playoffs, I think they can lock themselves up a spot there. I don't think it's that out of left field. I don't think it's that hard to believe that they can make that. I think if they win 1 game, they might even be locked in for a play-in spot. Maybe it's 2 games. I don't know exactly. I feel pretty good about them. I don't think that they're in really a bad spot. I'm curious to kind of see how they bounce back in this meta, but right now, of those teams that I think are in the best position for the playoffs out of this APAC region, I think the Spark look like the weakest of the 4. At number 3, I have no surprise, the Philadelphia Fusion. I think that this is a team that has had a very interesting season so far. Their regular season has been very, very lackluster, very inconsistent. 8-10 regular season record, -3 differential. Compare that to the Spark, who have a 10-8 +5 differential. Yet these teams have the same number of points, because the Fusion had a 2nd place finish in the kickoff clash. They've made the midseason madness. They made the Summer Showdown. Spark, only with those 2 bonus points because they made appearances in both the kickoff clash and midseason madness, but didn't really get great placement in either of those tournaments. Fusion, of course, also made, they were top 4 even in the midseason madness. So the Fusion have just looked better in the bigger moments, the games that kind of matter more. The Spark have looked smaller in those games. They've had wins, of course. They did beat the Seoul Dynasty in the midseason madness, and I think they also beat the Fusion in the midseason madness first round as well. But as the tournament went on, the Fusion looked a lot better. They looked more coordinated, put together, and the spark kind of fell flat as time went on. The Fusion, to me, definitely a dark horse team. I don't think they have the consistency to realistically win the playoffs and the tournament as a whole when we get to that point. But we've seen them have success against the Seoul Dynasty, and we've seen them find success against the Shanghai Dragons so far this season. So there isn't a team in the APAC region they cannot beat. With the exception of the Chengdu Hunters, it seems. That is the only team that really is their kryptonite right now. Generally speaking, though, the Fusion have looked good enough to beat a lot of the teams when they play their best. But they seemingly don't fully understand their identity in the regular season. Maybe they like to try to experiment until they get to the tournaments, and then they kind of figure out what they want to do. I think this tournament coming up, I'd love to just see MN3 Zest the entire time. Depending on what the tank meta is, Belisria Fury, you can kind of put which one you need. But I think they need to just full commit to what they've had success with so far this season, which is MN3 with Zest, and just kind of let that be what you do. I'm curious to see kind of where this Fusion roster goes as we kind of get to the end of the season, because they've had success, like I said, in playoffs. Their regular season is so inconsistent. That could be the thing that makes them have to play in the play-in tournament. And if they have to play Chengdu in the play-in tournament, maybe we don't see the Fusion in the playoffs. So that's why I think the Fusion are in a good spot. I think they have what it takes to potentially jump the spark, get the number 3 spot, guaranteed playoff spot. Don't have to worry about it, but there's also the possibility, based on what we've seen from them, that they struggle once again as we get into the Countdown Cup and maybe have to go to the play-in tournament where nothing is guaranteed. The top 2 in the APAC region is pretty cut and dry. We all know the top 2 teams in this region. It's really all about positioning where you want to put those teams. And right now, I think it is pretty clear that the Seoul Dynasty are the number 2 team in this region. They won the Kickoff Clash. Very, very close series between them and Shanghai in that Kickoff Clash qualifier. And then they dominated the Fusion, of course, in that final. But ever since then, I think the Dynasty have kind of been on a bit of a downward trajectory when you compare them to the Dragons. I think the Dragons have had a very, very upward trajectory as the season progressed. They've gotten better and better and better. The Dynasty haven't necessarily gotten worse. I just think that they have not managed to keep up with the Dragons as much, and I think that's been one of the problems. But we haven't yet seen Iris get integrated into this Dynasty roster. Maybe that is something that helps this roster, gives them a bigger playmaker in the flex support role. Maybe that is that boon they need. Smurf's been having a great season. Prophet, Fitz, and Stalker have all been having fantastic seasons. Vindame, I think, has been fantastic. So, generally speaking, this team has had a lot of really, really great performances throughout their roster. And I think they have what it takes to be a championship roster from what we've seen from them so far this season. But I need to see more of them. They have struggled in their most recent tournament appearances. Obviously, Summer Showdown was not a bad showing from them. Their qualifiers were really, really good up until they played Shanghai. And they had the closest finals of any of the regions in this tournament. So, Seoul, not a bad team by any means. I think that with Iris coming into this roster, I feel a lot better about where this team is going to go. If we get a traditional kind of flex support, main support meta, whatever it may be, I do think that this Dynasty team will look better now that Iris is here. Want to see what they do, but right now I think they clearly are sitting behind the Shanghai Dragons, who of course take the number 1 spot in this power ranking. I felt really, really good about where this team was during the midseason madness. Going into that tournament, I thought they would win it. Obviously didn't happen, but we finally got them having a very, very good performance in a tournament. And this tournament was incredible for them. Between the entire tournament, that means the qualifiers and the tournament itself, they lost 3 maps, and 2 of those were in the grand finals. This is a very dominant performance of the Shanghai Dragons. Definitely, in my opinion, the best team in this tournament across both regions. When you look at just pure performance, I think that Who Are You's Genji, the form that you would have been talking about back in 2017. That's how great he looked on the hero. With Lip popping off, Void having a really great Junker Queen performance, really good looks from Lee Jae-gun and Izayaki in that support line. Winningest player now in Overwatch League history, Izayaki is, as far as I can remember. Very good look from the Shanghai Dragons, really getting to the point where we knew they could get when they won the tournament last year, when they won the whole season last year, grand finals, obviously, 2 tournament wins and a grand finals title. It was a huge season for them last year, and they still look to be one of the best teams in the league, and certainly right now they look like the best team in the APAC region. So there it is. That is my APAC region power rankings. Throw it up real quick. The full list, you can see it here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you agree, you disagree. I definitely think there is some movement that can be had towards the bottom, especially with the, the spark and the charge. I think there's a lot of movement in those two. I think you could flip those two, and some people might, but right now I think you have to put the spark ahead, just because of the performance they've had across the whole season. I think that one good tournament from the charge doesn't erase the 2 good tournaments the spark had, even though the 2 tournaments in the Summer Showdown were drastically different. But hey, it's 7 teams. I think this one definitely not going to provide as many kind of questions or kind of debates as the Western region did, considering the fact that this APAC Summer Showdown was pretty straightforward and went about as everyone expected. So that's really kind of the general theme I found in this tournament. So I'm curious to kind of hear what people's thoughts are. But that's it for this power rankings. Check back Friday for the Western region power rankings. That one gonna be juicy. I can already feel some people might disagree in some of the spots. So if you're excited for that, check back on Friday. And if you want more videos like this in the future, consider liking and subscribing. Like I said, comment your thoughts down below on my rankings. Let me know your own rankings if you want. And let me know if you think the Shanghai Dragons are the best team from this meta, or if you think a team or multiple teams from the Western region look better. That's going to be all for me this time. Hope you all enjoyed. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.